This story is not meant for small ears. This is a bear attack that is one of the most horrendous that I know of. Why then would I share something like this with you? I'm horrified and fascinated by the power of bears. I've loved them ever since I was a child. Part of my life's goal is to protect them in their wild places. Many times it's protecting bears from us, and the best way to do that is education. Bears might look cuddly and soft. We've all had teddy bears, one of my favorites. I've worked with different species of bear, 4 actually, and they're all very unique and very different. Even within the bear species, the bear themselves, they can be very different, even in the same family. They're a lot like us in that regard. You might get one that's cranky, you might get one that's nice. You might get one like me that can be cranky or nice on any given day. But the fact is, bear attacks are very, very rare. But when they happen, they are of a special magnitude of violence. This is going to be a longer video. It's already a minute in, I haven't started. But I'm not going to be laughing here in a moment, because I'm going to tell you a very true, very gruesome story of what happened to this beautiful young lady behind me. This is Olga forever 19 years old. And that is her stepfather, Igor, behind. When I first shared this story, a lot of people were very uncomfortable by the way in which he was holding her. And there's probably a reason for that. We'll get into that in just a moment. Some folks don't like these longer stories. Some would rather have that I split it up into 5 or 10 parts, but here it is for you if you're willing to listen. Olga was training to be a psychiatrist. She was 19 years old, involved in school, and she was an outdoors woman. Always had loved being outdoors. Now, her mother's name is Tatiana. Tatiana, back home in the village while they were out fishing, didn't like any of that stuff, so she stayed home. She didn't like the bugs, the fishing, the smell of fish. She didn't like the hardship of camping and staying out under the stars. So ever since she was little, she was raised by this man, and that was their thing. They would go out on an annual fishing trip every year. And this year they went out to a beautiful spot in far northern Russia. It's not too far from the Kamchatka region, but Siberia. And as you can see behind me, the area is beautiful. There's a lot of fish in the water. That's what they were doing that day. They had been on a multi-day camping trip where they were hauling in fish after fish. And it was time to bring the fish back to camp and to have some yummy salmon. And on the way back, Igor told his stepdaughter that I forgot my fishing pole and I need to go back. She kicked up a little bit of a fuss. She was tired, so she kicked her heels a little bit and she followed behind at a sedate pace. He was just a few feet in front of her, and if you can imagine, if you will, a beautiful river. Rapids in some areas it's very calm. The type of river that anybody would love to be on, and there was nobody but themselves out there to have it. They were near 30 miles from any help or anybody. She, since she was a few feet behind him, didn't see the bear, neither did he, till it was on. Massive, massive bear grabbed him and began to shake him like a dog with a toy. Picked him up by his neck, and Olga would be able to hear his neck break, certainly. And she certainly saw what happened next. After ragdolling Igor, the bear stood up to its full height, slamming him on the ground. Standing up one more time, the bear came down with its paws and collapsed his skull. We know this because of the autopsy done on the man. The bear completely obliterated his skull like a watermelon dropped off a 3-story building. She had already begun to run. She had made it about 70 yards before the bear caught up. I don't know if she turned around and looked. I can imagine if she did, she would see the bear gaining every step. And it had to be the worst feeling in the world. Or if she had been like me, she would have just run for the timber and never looked back until the bear grabbed her and took her to the ground. But this was strange. After the bear had so violently demolished Igor, breaking his neck, smashing his skull in just a few seconds, really, the bear wasn't doing that type of damage to her. It was biting her, but it wasn't really getting into her. It was clawing her, holding her down, biting at her. It began to tear at her left butt cheek or her right butt cheek and began to consume small bits of her, but it wasn't going in for the kill. She didn't understand what was going on, but every time she tried to get away, the bear would stop what it was doing, and it would grab her up again, shake her viciously. But if she laid there and she didn't fight back, the bear was content to just kind of bite at her a little bit. But every time she tried to really get away, the bear would come back and knock her down. This was going on for about 5 or 10 minutes before she was able to fish out her cell phone from her pocket, very, very slowly, and she dialed for help. Now, she didn't call 911, friends. I think any of us that have ever been in a life and death situation, it's true. You might be the biggest, toughest man or lady out there, but when you die, you're going to be wanting your mama. She was calling for her mother, Tatiana, and when she first called her mother didn't believe it. She laughed at her daughter because her daughter said this: "Mom, help! I'm being eaten by a bear, and it hurts horribly." Her mom laughed because, she couldn't believe something like that. And then Tatiana mumbled, "Mom, listen." You could hear the grizzly bear in the background. You could hear when it began to bite and chew on her. The mother screamed frantically. And the mother later said that when she screamed, the bear's growls increased. So the mother quieted down and she began to whisper for her daughter to hold on. They had a conversation, this time of about 7 minutes on the phone. The mother heard this and then the call dropped. Her mother immediately fell to pieces, ripping her hair, her clothes. By now, her small village had filled. Her family had come in and they had called people that were loading up trucks, trying to figure out exactly where they were. Help was on the way, but they had no idea where the way was. So what are they going to do? They have to wait and hope. The men were heading off in that direction when the phone rang again. It was Olga again. And what she said next will forever horrify me because it's when I understood then what was going on. "Mom, the bear's back and she's brought her cubs and they're all eating me. It hurts." I can hear this in my mind. Her mom's begging her to hold on. "We're sending help. Tiana, we're sending help. Hold on." But help wouldn't arrive in time. Olga began to confess and tell her mother things and talk with her mother. A play-by-play blow, like the UFC and Joe Rogan is commentating a fight. Olga's torn between horrible pain and then the weakness of blood loss, but she's explaining what's going on. She explained what she saw happen to her stepfather, just so you know. You wonder how I know these things. You can know these things too if you search up the transcripts. And I recommend you do that if you don't believe what I'm telling you. It makes my gorge rise to think on it. The call dropped again when the phone was knocked from her hand. Her mother's intuition told her that her daughter was dying, but she was still alive, so she clutched the phone, weeping and praying to God. When the phone finally rang again, she was very, very weak, and she had this to say: "Mom, it's not hurting anymore. I don't feel the pain. Forgive me for everything. I love you so much." That was the last that Tatiana had ever heard of her daughter. A half an hour later, Igor's brother arrived with 6 other hunters. They found the mother bear guarding the bodies. They eliminated her, as well as her 3 cubs. All of the bear were found with remains inside. So what really happened that day? I believe that Igor startled the mother bear. She was in the high grass, told her cubs to hide. She attacked Igor. When the threat ended, she saw Tatiana running away, and her motherly instincts led her to give chase. When she knocked her down and began to savage her, though, she realized that this was a teaching opportunity for her mother bear. She would not miss an opportunity at a free meal. She would show the cubs how to capitalize on the unexpected bounty. It is impossible to reason with such ferocity. Rest in peace, Olga, and rest in peace, Igor.